first, your reaction to the big news. Chesney Hawkes live in the studio. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm delighted and happy for you. I think it's a late Christmas present, and thank God it's him on the guitar, not me. I'll say that.
Or me. And I promise not to sing either. James, on a more serious note, Liz Truss, you of course wrote the book on Liz Truss, a brilliant book called Out of the Blue, which you co-wrote with Harry Cole, who is the political editor of The Sun. I've read every word of it, and it is an excellent book, nominated for many, many awards. And I just wondered what you make of this. I mean, it's probably inevitable. There's been a long-running saga, hasn't it, in terms of who Liz Truss was going to nominate. She put, I think, 14 nominations in, but only 11 got through.
Yeah, so there's been a big debate inside Team Truss World for the past 14 months or so, since she left office in October 2022, about whether or not there should be an honours list. And there was some arguing, look, there shouldn't be an honours list, and if there is, I don't want to be on it. And others saying, well, you know, there's an argument for a small list, potentially rewarding some of those who've helped at different points of their career. And looking at this list today, I would say it's very much like that. So I think one of the awards that struck me was the MBE for David Heale, who's the long-serving constitution chairman of Liz Truss's association in Norfolk. Now, if you look back 14 years ago when she was involved in a minor deselection scandal.
The Turn-Up Taliban.
The Turn-Up Taliban, probably the favourite chapter in the book. He features very prominently in that, and he changes his mind, and he backs her, and she then becomes an MP, and of course 12 years later becomes Prime Minister. So a lot of different people from Liz Truss's past features on this list, and of course 3 peerages for 3 of those who worked with her in Westminster.
Is that the right thing? I mean, lots of Prime Ministers do this. Not every Prime Minister, but the vast majority of Prime Ministers put these things out. They're always criticised. Is this just par for the course? Is this just what happens when a resignation honours list goes out? Because I think the controversy today seems to be, look, she was Prime Minister for 49 days, for goodness sake, and that's some gong for every sort of, what is it, every 3.5 days that she's doled them out. What's your view on this? Is this appropriate?
I mean, I think that talking to some Conservative MPs today, they were remarking on, you know, just how some of the WhatsApp groups also remember, of course, there were a couple of knighthoods and damehoods for some MPs, how remarkably quiet the WhatsApp groups were, and I think that tells its own story. Normally there's a sort of flurry of congratulations.
Yes.
And I think people perhaps... I mean, it wasn't as bad as some would have feared. You know, I think that the Boris Johnson one was probably a bit worse in terms of what happened, in terms of the rows, etc., and some of the younger nominees. But I think, look, you know, frankly, most of these lists do tend to attract controversy. But the fact is, Liz Truss will probably forever now be the shortest-serving Prime Minister in history, and there's a legitimate debate to be had about at what point should people be given peerages, etc. I do accept that.
What do you make of some of the personnel as well? We've had Alex Shelbrooke, the first Tory MP to back Liz Truss for the leadership, and Jackie Doyle-Price, former minister, who's been friends with Truss for decades. We're just seeing pictures on the screen. If you're watching talkTV, we're seeing various people like Gilly Cooper, for example. She's got a damehood. I'm sure Rishi Sunak, who's a big fan of Gilly Cooper's books, isn't too sad about that. But in terms of Liz Truss herself, are any of these particular personnel, do you think, massively controversial? A lot of people, I mean, in politics will know, for example, her Deputy Chief of Staff, Ruth Porter. I know Ruth Porter, but at the same time, she's not exactly a household name in the way that, well, I'm not sure Alex Shelbrooke or Jackie Doyle-Price are household names, but they're certainly better known than Ruth Porter.
Yeah, I think that, you know, in terms of once you've accepted the premise that she should be given a list, then it's like, who's actually on this list? And unlike, say, for instance, in 1976, when it was the Lavender List, Harold Wilson, there was some controversial businessmen with well-known scandals, people like Jimmy Goldsmith, etc. There's no one like that, really. And I think that Alex Shelbrooke and Jackie Doyle-Price, for instance, go back to the late 90s and early noughties in terms of their long-standing relationships with her. Rob Butler, one of the MPs who got an OBE, he helped prep her in the debates, etc., in the leadership race last year, because he used to work in television. None of these particularly controversial individuals. The point just remains is, should a Prime Minister of 49 days get to give one or not? And if you don't think that, then I suspect you won't be in favour of whoever gets the awards, no matter how deserving their cause.
What do you make of the timing of this as well, James, and the fact that sometimes these come out on a standalone basis, but actually this has been in the works for some time, over a year, presumably, or longer, that Liz Truss has been thinking about this. And now we have it out, sort of what in the West Wing they used to say, put it out with the trash. You put a lot of these things out together and it gets less attention because you have, of course, the many hundreds, thousands of New Year's honours as well. So probably if someone picks up a newspaper or is chatting to their friends or hears something on the radio, they're probably thinking more about Gilly Cooper's damehood than they are about you know, Ruth Porter being sent to the House of Lords or Alex Shelbrooke being given a knighthood, for example.
Yeah, I mean, that's completely it. And I think that it's noticeable that actually alongside that big New Year's honours list, there was a smaller one put on the Downing Street website, which says about 5 names on, which have people like, people probably deserving, I'd say, like David Davis, for instance, long-standing Tory MP, gets knighted, etc. But there are a sort of handful of political honours bunged out, along with the ones like Michael Leavis, Leona Lewis, etc. And I think that's interesting. So I think that it's very much more about getting all the honours out at once, hoping people get a little bit distracted, rather than we have what we had over the summer, which was this protracted row over Boris Johnson's honours, and I'm not too surprised about that. And I would just make the point that now it's not just, of course, Truss honouring her acolytes, her followers, etc. This is a long-standing practice now, which we've seen in the last 10 years. There's been an 8-fold increase in the number of sitting MPs getting honours, and it's something that successive Conservative Prime Ministers have done. And I think Rishi Sunak, with this handful of honours today, as well as Liz Truss's, is showing that that's not going to go away anytime soon.
And it's very useful to them. People were talking about reform of the House of Lords today. It's very useful for them to have a little bauble in their pocket to say, you do what you're told, or help us out on this one. We'll see if we can get you a knighthood or a CBE or something like that.
Well, of course, the danger is, Peter, is that once you have used that, it's a bit like firing a pistol. And once the bullet's gone, it's left the chamber. So you had, I mean, there was a case during the Brexit years where Sir John Hayes got his knighthood and then I think voted against Theresa May's deal. So, I mean, it's sort of like, where do we go? And the problem is now that every Tory MP, I think with the exception of Nigel Evans and Andrew Mitchell, elected before 1997, has now got a knighthood. So once you've got sort of, they've got their K and they've got their seat. I mean, it's a bit. I mean, I pity the Whip's office, which has got a very difficult time as it is.
What more can you give them, essentially? Yeah, it's a very, very good point. Just while we have you, James, I wonder if I could ask you about the battles ahead, because we're going into the new year. Parliament's not back this week, but is back the following week. Rwanda, huge challenge for Rishi Sunak, and many other challenges ahead for him. What are the sort of inbox aspects? I asked someone very senior in Number 10 recently whether they would be marking the 4th of January, which is of course exactly a year since Rishi Sunak said, "Judge me in a year," on his 5 pledges, and that person said, no.
I suspect that, yes, Rwanda is going to be the big thing in January. You've got to remember, of course, this is an election year. So how much is going to be the air war about the media and debates around the election, and how much is going to be actually done in Parliament? And I suspect Parliament will, apart from the Rwanda, is going to play an increasingly less prominent role in politics, I'd say. And a lot of it will be, what kind of levers can Rishi Sunak pull? Because he's got about, 10 months probably till an election, we reckon.
Do you think October, November, James?
I still think so.
I do too. I do too.
I think people we should be careful of a little bit is sometimes a lot of Labour people are going, oh, it's got to be May, it's got to be May, it's got to be May. Well, I think there's a not so subtle attempt there to try and build up the kind of 2007 Gordon Brown bottle of brown narrative, etc. So we've got to be a little bit careful of that, I think. Yeah,
it's a very, very good point, actually, because certainly some senior Labour people I was chatting to saying they are absolutely preparing for a May election. I suppose they have to, because they don't know what's going to happen. But Rishi Sunak confirming it could have been in theory in the first few weeks of January 2025, but he did confirm at the Christmas party for journalists that I was at, I think you were there too, that it will be 2024. It will be next year. So that is something. And actually there's so many countries in the Western world and beyond that are going to the polls. America, India, Ireland, the European Union's having a selection. We'll have Metro Mayor elections here in the UK. Andy Burnham's up for election. Sadiq Khan in London as well. It will be an absolute flurry of activity no matter when the UK general election is called, James.
Massively so. 3/4 of the democratic world will be going to the polls. You've got the European parliamentary ones as well. Every country will be learning from each other. There'll be lots of kind of multinational firms. You can imagine kind of Isla Vido, the Tory strategist, will be looking at what happens in elections around the world, all trying to learn the lessons of that. And then, of course, there's challenges with that. And, wrote a story yesterday. The Security Minister, Tom Tugendhat, has issued advice to MPs because they think, although we've had lots of elections before, the new threats we could have in terms of technology, the evolving different speed at which hostile states are using these, means it's going to be an interesting one in terms of the actual physical process of the elections and how those cycles go about. But it's going to be a very, very interesting one. And it could be a bit like, one of those great years in history, like, 2016, we had Trump and Brexit, 1968, we had elections all across the world. You'll know as well, Peter, that, these things often, they come in waves, and it'll be interesting to see if it's going to be kind of after the post-COVID years, we have a great sweeping away and a whole new rest of leadership for the 2020s.
It's a very, very good point. We've had a message from Jenny and Milton Keynes saying, Rishi likes Jilly Cooper. He should be renamed Raunchy Rishi.
Well, Peter, there's actually a great interview in the Times today which Jilly Cooper talks about this, and she said she sent him a copy of her latest book titled To Dishy Rishi.
I like it.
So a bit of a friendship going on there, I think.
Wow, I love it. My goodness, my goodness. Yeah, it was funny actually because there's a very senior journalist who it wouldn't be right of me to name, and we were put in what's called a donut. So just a group of people who were there, and different journalists at this party. They every year, every Prime Minister, whoever it is, twice a year has the journalists like James and me in all of dozens of people into Downing Street for a Christmas drinks thing and a summer drinks thing as well. And the senior journalist, who shall remain nameless, said to me, let's see if we can get through the entire conversation with Rishi Sunak, because he comes around and chats them. Let's see if we can get through the entire conversation without him mentioning Jilly Cooper. And we did manage to get it. And that journalist actually started the conversation by, he's a tall, thin man, and he started the conversation by telling Rishi Sunak that he was going to be playing the role of Santa Claus at a children's party the next day. Santa was obviously too busy to do it himself, so this person was doing it in his stead. And I piped up and said, but to this person who's very thin, I said, you're neither fat nor jolly. So what's going on? So anyway, there we are. Listen, thank you, James. My second favourite interview of this hour. Obviously, Chesney Hawkes is coming out later on.